I want to recount that shit, man. That was hilarious.
The Pope of Color thing?
Yeah, the most recent Pope being from Argentina. And he's an Italian immigrant. And that lived in Argentina. Does that make him Latino? Hello? What are we doing? I was just like, what? Does that make him a person of color now?
Did you know Columbus is actually Cuban?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for independent commentary on cultural news and politics, where it's always our mission to arm you with the tools you need to do the stuff that you do and not let the media control your brain. Here with me today, David Rand, Kyle Mack.
I thought you were going to go Italian the way you had your hands there.
Hey,
the way I do it.
Cut through the media misdirection.
Close enough, right? Close enough.
It's funny that you botched the end of that because this is like the media misdirection week. Like this was propaganda week. About $68 billion currently languishing in the House. And what we saw this week was a media blitz from the institutions that be to generate war fever with Russia. So we're going to go through a whole bunch of stories and kind of how they all interrelate with that. A lit streamer goes viral in front of the Israeli embassy.
I can see Jesus over your shoulder right now staring at you.
Yeah, just judging. Is P. Diddy the Jeffrey Epstein of music? And a lot of other great human reaction content. So let's see what we get.
Before we get into it, like, comments, and I can't speak either. We're doing great today.
We're starting up hot.
Like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're listening to us. And especially if you're on YouTube, hit the notification bell, because about like a quarter of our subscribers don't see the content right in their feed. So that notification bell lets you get it right to us. Lets us get. I can't talk right now.
It's fine. It's fine.
We'll get right to you. We'll show up. We'll get right to you. New episode out.
Yeah, we just hit 800 subscribers on YouTube. So help us get even more by recommending the podcast. 1,000 subscribers on TikTok. We're going to be going live on Wednesday, tentatively, is what we think right now, right?
8:30
8:30 Mountain Time. We'll
issues.
announce it and all that stuff, right? And also join our Discord because we have awesome memes in there.
Go down a little bit. You got to go down a little bit. You're not seeing the button. There we go.
There we go.
Joe Sheehan.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
You've done it to yourself.
Oh man,
guys,
it is so funny.
I do like that there's like memes that are coming out of this. You with your women's fashion critique, Bennett with being a CIA asset or agent.
Yeah,
it's great.
Look, you know what? Okay, so today is the first day of Women's History Month. So I've decided I have compiled a list of women's fashion.
We're gonna react to
through
that.
the ages, and we're gonna go through it. Not today.
Which century?
Members only. Members exclusive.
That's right. This is behind the paywall. You got to pay for this. This is quality
Which century
content.
was the best for women's fashion?
I'm not going to give out any spoilers. You gotta sign up. Speaking of signing up, we've got membership tiers, you guys. Now we're getting legit here. If you're watching on YouTube, you have two cool options. The first one is Echo Chamber. It's the most inexpensive way of investing in your favorite podcast. Gives you access to our exclusive channels within our Discord server, which of course isn't itself exclusive. You can go there for free. There's a link in the description. You can join it, but there are exclusive channels
This
you
is
can
a
get
higher
into.
tier of channels.
Exactly.
That we're building out.
And then we've got some cool special emojis and loyalty badges on YouTube itself. One step up from that, if you shift over to Substack, if you're a Substack subscriber, if you like reading long form stuff or consuming video content there, we have a members only written and video content on Substack. And at that second tier, which is $8, all it is, $8 a month, you also get exclusive discounts on HR goods like this hat that I'm wearing, like this t-shirt. We'll have lots more cool stuff coming soon, thanks to our awesome sponsor, Revved Up Promo, who's doing all of our merch. And then at the very top, if you want to be like your brother Russ, and support us at the highest possible level and get yourself shouted out on the show, it's $15 a month. You can join in during live interviews. So when we do an interview, we will send you a link personally, and then you can tune in as the audience and you can sit in on the interview and you can ask questions for us to ask our guest. It's going to be really cool. Great way to get access to the people that we talk to. We will give you early access to our weekly episodes. Those go out to members only, and then like a day later or 2 days later, they'll go out to everyone else. once a year, we're going to do a free merch drop. So everyone at this tier will get something for free from us in terms of swag. And of course, we're going to mention you in the show credits. So this week, it's your brother, Russ.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Russ.
We appreciate you, man.
Who's been on the podcast and was an early interview, so we could practice interviewing with him. That was fun.
It was fun. It was fun. He did great. And you know, like I wish that my history teacher in high school was as cool as Russ.
Absolutely.
Because my history teacher was an absolute socialist.
Really?
And had I not been on it, had I not had good upbringing, I totally could have turned out just a woke leftist. But
actually, we have a new segment where we're going to go over some of the pushback that we got from the comments here. Where's the actually meme? Do we have that?
No, I don't have
Bennett can cue it up.
Bring it up, Bennett.
Bennett will pull it up in post.
Actually,
Okay,
It's just
what
like
happened,
writing
Joe?
down. I have more work to do.
So last week we got some pushback in the comments over what we were talking about regarding there never having been a pope of color, which really was
non-white pope.
just a joke in the moment. But apparently there actually have been 3 popes from the continent of Africa, and they're all in like the hundreds BC. So they're very, very far in the past. But they were from Africa. So
hundreds BC would not make sense.
I mean, I'll pull up the article right here.
The church wasn't up in 100
Or
BC.
AD. Maybe I meant AD. I'm sorry.
This wouldn't be till like 400 or something.
Right. No, you're right. That makes sense.
Before the birth of Christ.
Hundreds AD. Thank you. So the 3 of them, they were, so the 14th Pope, Victor the First, was 189 to 198 AD. Then we had Miltiades.
Yes, got it. They had landownings in Africa.
Now, yeah, the question is, were they African? Or were they Roman aristocracy who owned land in Africa?
Is this sort of like a Cleopatra thing? Like,
What do you mean, sort of like a Cleopatra thing? Huh?
Well,
What do you mean?
I'm just
What do you mean
saying,
by
like,
that, Kyle?
I'm just saying there was a bunch of hubbub about this last year and because they made her a black woman when she was clearly not.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Also making Egyptians black is also the erasure of a culture.
Yeah.
And additionally to that, making Cleopatra black, it erases the history of Egypt because they were conquered by Greeks, and then their aristocracy were Greek for a very long time, including Cleopatra.
Interesting.
So, and once again with the popes, we also got pushback from Hannah in their Discord. That's why you should join our Discord so you can check out all the great discussions about the current pope, who was said to be Latino because he's from Argentina. That said, he was born by Italian immigrants. So no, he's not Latino because he's not racially anything other than a white dude.
Yeah.
It's like calling me a Native American because I was born in a place next to Native Americans that was once occupied by Native Americans. It's ridiculous, right? It's just, he doesn't make you a member of the racial group that once lived in that space just because you immigrated there.
Yeah.
You can't claim to be a person of color without actually having color.
Well, as I said before we started recording, pink is a color. So how dare you
What worse
strip
do
me
we mean
of my
anybody
rights
anymore?
as a marginalized group?
Well, because it's such a ridiculous standard because you can blow that up and be like, well, but they're from the global south. Well, but and then like obviously the popes that had land ownings in Africa. Like,
Well, I mean, with names like Victor and Galasius, they don't sound particularly African per se.
No.
They do sound like Roman aristocracy with landholdings.
Come on, man.
But this is all beside the point.
Come on, man.
Okay, all right.
Come on, man.
The point that we were trying to make at that moment in the show last week is that the AI is just, it's like literally dumb, because if you were to just, if it's crawling all the information on the internet, right, and it's saying, okay, on average, what nationality or what ethnicity were the popes that existed? There have been, according to the website that I pulled up, religionnews.com, 266 popes total in history. 217 of them are from Italy. 16 of them are from France and 6 are from Germany. Certainly not nations.
And I will say, I just pulled up a picture of Pope Victor I, who is on that list of African popes, and he's a white guy.
Confirmed. So, despite the fact that they were from the continent of Africa, may or may not have actually been African.
Even then, from is a loosely defined term in this as well.
Yeah, resident of, right? It's like, yeah.
But there is like a lot of internet BS with this stuff that are people trying to rewrite history.
Yeah.
Oh, these different people that you like for some reason niche were actually black, and It's that's
I will say he is a Roman African. So
Does it say that?
that's because
Yes, it says
Rome
it right here, Roman
controlled
African.
northern Africa for a very long time. Duh. That doesn't make you black.
For several hundred years after the fact of this.
Yes.
Like, Rome had control over northern Africa entirely.
Yes.
That's the whole story of that's the whole story of Cleopatra. She was like managing government over like the Egyptian realm of Rome at the time, right?
Yes, and she's
don't
part of
know.
a noble family
Yeah.
that ruled.
But I
Egypt for a
believe
very
she
long
was
time.
born in Greece.
Yeah.
Right. I might be wrong about that. Don't correct me.
The other one I got wrong. Something I actually got wrong. And I want to correct the record on is Khashoggi. I said that Hillary Clinton that happened under Hillary. It actually happened under Trump. My point was that Hillary Clinton throughout her tenure worked with and then later undermined the Mubarak regime. All throughout the 1990s, we worked with various different dictators who killed people, and we were cool with that. In fact, that's what CIA black sites were that we collaborate with, and we're perfectly comfortable with those in those circumstances. So we're no better than Putin in this case.
Sorry, they're CIA African American sites. I just want you to use the right terminology. Look, it's
You're
2024.
Right, you're right. Some of them are in
just-
Africa. It's a good point. Good point. You got me there.
I'm sorry. Okay, enough of this. Let's get on to what happened this week.
Actually.
Actually,
That's enough, actually.
If you are a small business owner looking for exponential growth, you have to connect with Adam Thuen at Intellectual Patriots. He will revolutionize your business game and help you get to the next level. Adam can streamline your business practices and advertising strategies to improve your bottom line. His expertise in data engineering means he can build you the systems you need to collect and analyze market data. His mission is to provide you with invaluable insights to fuel your success. From grant writing and business proposals to digital systems integrations, even AI management, Intellectual Patriots is a one-stop shop for cutting-edge solutions. Don't wait another second. Visit intelpatriots.com to learn more. That's INTEL patriots.com.
This episode is brought to you by Revved Up Promo, the official apparel partner of Human Reaction. Revved Up is a premier full-service shop specializing in laser engraving, screen printing, and embroidery. Not only are they now making all of our apparel right down the road from us, they can do the same for your brand and ship it to you anywhere in the world. Revved Up helps you navigate the extensive universe of merch options and uses state-of-the-art techniques to showcase your brand in its very best light. So if you want to support our show and our generous sponsor, you can now do so by buying our merch and by turning to Revved Up Promo for your own custom apparel needs. Reach them at revveduppromo.com. That's with 2 V's and 2 P's, or just check the show notes for a link. What do we got going on this week?
All right. So I had the strangest sense this week. It was very, very weird. On Monday and Tuesday, I kept on seeing these stories come up, and I was like, wow, that's propaganda. And strangely and interestingly timed.
Can you just, what was it that keyed you into like, ooh, that's propaganda?
Well, specifically, this New York Times article comes out, and it says spy war. And I was like, why aren't we? It's not usual for an institution like the New York Times to come out and be like, hey, check out all this cool spy shit we're doing. You know, like, why
because
would they do
typically
that?
spy shit's secret.
Yes. And
That's the nature of spy
Right.
shit.
So that means-
right, Bennett?
Can confirm.
So the CIA gave the New York Times access to secret bases in Ukraine, and they wrote this puff piece about how awesome it is that for a decade, we've been working, the CIA has been working in Ukraine to establish military ties and interoperability with Ukrainians to conduct a war against Russia. And they just kind of talk about this, like how great it is. And like you're reading it and you're like, are we admitting now? Like, because I don't imagine the Kremlin doesn't have a subscription to the New York Times if they want to get one.
Well, and Putin was
Right.
saying all this kind of started in 2014, right?
Yes.
A decade ago.
Yes. And if you listen to Ben Shapiro, which we'll cover later, he just says, oh, in 2014, Russia sent troops to the Donbass, secret troops, for no reason whatsoever. So for new listeners, in 2014, we supported a coup that overthrew the democratically elected government of Ukraine.
We
to
at the
install
Human
friendly-
Reaction podcast supported it. Yeah.
Personally.
Yes.
With
I'm
our
sorry.
hard-earned dollars.
The U.S. government did. And they revealed the whole thing was a CIA off in the beginning. Now, what's interesting here, what flagged it for me, it was the strangeness of that, and it was the timing. Now, in October, the Biden administration asked for $68 billion for Ukraine, and they smashed it together with Israel spending and some other foreign aid aid, because when people think foreign aid, they think like bandages and food for people,
water,
and for like a tsunami, right?
Yeah.
No, these are explosive munitions. There's
Defensive
aid.
weapons, bro.
Yeah.
Defensive weapons.
Okay, so a defensive weapon is no longer defensive if I can aim it at you.
Correct.
That's the rule of a defensive weapon. How about we just make that a rule? If it explodes, not defensive.
What is a defensive weapon then?
There's no such thing as a defensive weapon. There are defensive things like body armor.
Sure.
Right. Like armor-proof SUVs.
Okay. Yeah. Bulletproof things.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not super useful in a war though.
Well, I mean, you got to transport people somehow.
I mean, of course, but
so
not if you're trying to win.
That got through the Senate and through the negotiations in February, and has pretty much been paralyzed from going through the House because Speaker Johnson, the speaker that was put in by the conservatives through the McCarthy hullabaloo, has said, no, not good enough. We need this. We need to rebalance this differently because right now this is not really doing much as far as changing real policy at the border. It does do a few things on asylum and stuff like that, but it doesn't really solve a border or create a real border solution. And it does too much in Ukraine, and he can't hold his caucus together while spending 10 times more in Ukraine than on our own border when we have millions of people crossing the border right now.
Yeah,
So-
I think that the hypocrisy there is just too much for really anybody to overcome at this point.
Right.
What's the significance of the timing here? I mean, why now?
Yeah. So it's that spending thing. And then what's interesting is that it notes that 2014 to today, 10 years, 1 decade, what happened over that time, right? And for regular listeners of podcasts, it's pretty clear. 2014, there's the coup. Since then, there was an escalating set of circumstances happening in the eastern parts of Ukraine that was very particular to that time, including 2 different peace accords called the Minsk Accords to negotiate out the kind of civil war happening between eastern Ukraine and western Ukraine. This was after the coup where we put in our guy, right? We literally put in our guy and then had this dude on the Daily Show come on and be like, hey, we're going to steal Robin from Batman.
Yeah, I think that was on the Colbert Report is where that happened.
Yes,
That's
there we
right.
go.
That's right.
Yeah, and like our State Department was like spiking the ball saying, look at all the great work we've done. One woman was caught on a diplomatic cable, not a diplomat, on a phone call, so basically picking the people who would become the new government of Ukraine in 2014.
Who is that?
Victoria Nuland is her name. And Victoria, what got covered is she said, blah, 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 fuck the EU. She used a naughty word.
Quote unquote.
And so the press said, U.S. diplomat says naughty word. What they don't cover is that this was her picking who would eventually, and this, become exactly the people who would take over Ukraine after the coup.
Meaning Zelensky.
Yeah, this wasn't us. No. This was the guy before Zelensky.
Oh,
this is
okay.
2 guys before Zelensky, if I remember right. Regardless,
I see.
The important thing was that she was selecting who would become the cabinet and the first and the second, like all the major people, including discussing various different people who had ties to the ultra-nationalist Nazi components of Ukraine and putting them in positions of power.
You mean the wholesome pro-democracy defenders of the free world?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what really spiked the whole, oh my God, it is propaganda week, was when I saw Victoria Nuland on CNN justifying more spending in Ukraine.
It is, and I do hear you and the others in the administration and supporters talking about the vital necessity to do this. But as people say, hope is not a strategy. And do you have any actual belief or reason to believe that eventually this bill will be paid? And if not, how are you going to make sure Ukraine gets vital weapons and ammunition?
Christiane, I have strong confidence that when the House comes back after they've been out in their districts hearing from the American people, after they have heard from Ukraine, they have heard from Europe, which, by the way, just passed $54 billion in additional aid itself, that we will do what we have always done, which is defend democracy and freedom around the world, not just for victims of tyrants like Putin, but in our own interest in preserving a free and open international order. That's what we need to do. We've done it before. And by the way, we have to remember that the bulk of this money is going right back into the U.S. economy to make those weapons, including good-paying jobs in some 40 states across the United States.
I think she just said the quiet part out loud, you guys.
That's the talking point right now from supporters of this stuff.
Really?
Yes.
Now it's not like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist if you think the military industrial complex is the thing, to now it's just like, the military industrial complex is good for the economy.
Mm-hmm.
We got to make all those jobs.
Yeah.
We got to get some jobs. Well, and also she did the whole like we got to make the world safe for democracy thing in there too.
Yes.
Right? Which is
the
like
rules-based
the
international order, Kyle.
God, she hit all
The
the warm fuzzy words for the brain, huh?
But what about the rules?
Putin is a tyrant. Make world safe for democracy.
Economy, jobs.
We're making jobs. Right?
Let me be clear. There are no rules in the international scene. We break our own rules all the time, like when we overthrew a democratically elected regime in 2014 that she was caught on a cable selecting. Like, and then this reporter doesn't challenge her at all on this. In fact, just sits there and why should we give them everything that you want to get? Like this person who is, I'll say it, a war criminal. Somebody who literally installed neo-Nazis in the government of Ukraine.
Oh,
using the CIA and the State Department. Come on.
There's such a fun clip. I should find it of her having to kind of defend the neo-Nazis. Like
Yes.
she was there's a clip from a year or two ago where they're asking her like, so like, but what about these like neo-Nazis? Like, well, you know, she's like trying to like work away and weasel her way out of it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's so clear. I mean, it's defending democracy with an asterisk, and the asterisk is if they aren't pro-Western, then they have to be overthrown.
Not pro-Western even, right? Like neo-Nazism isn't pro-Western.
Well, no.
Right?
I'm not even saying that. But like if the regime in Ukraine wasn't on board with whatever her agenda is, they have to go. And it doesn't matter who replaces them so long as they're willing to play ball.
And this is always the problem, right? It's solving the problem of the moment in a way that makes sure there's all the money goes to the military industrial complex and the BLOB, right? Because at every step of the way in the 1990s, in the late 1990s, we supported all kinds of jihadist factions. We supported the jihadis against like the Russians and all that kind of stuff. We helped them in Chechnya and things like that. And then when they bombed us, when 9/11 happened, the quoted response from Bill Clinton, because he wasn't president at the time, was, yeah, but they were all friends. We gave them all this money and weapons and training and stuff like that so that they could accomplish their goals. Why would they attack us? Right? It's they must like us because they're taking our weapons. That's the absurdity thing. The question is when does this all turn around against us? When does this blow up in our face like every other foreign policy these kinds of people have been putting us through for 3 decades?
I think likely this war continues on for a long period of time because there's going to be no reason for these people to try to get peace talks, and it's probably going to escalate into something pretty disastrous, more disastrous than the hundreds of thousands of people that are dead. Right? Like there's probably going to be some sort of event that really just continues to escalate it further. That would be my suspicion, because there's no reason for these people to want peace. It doesn't help them in any way.
Well, the narrative has kind of shifted to Putin threatens nuclear war if NATO lets Ukraine into it, right? Into NATO.
Well, that was another piece of the propaganda, right?
Yeah.
Is so like this week, the guy, and I actually have the video if you want to see it, Kyle, a NATO leader, it's about 30 seconds long. You know, so the way it was covered in the Sun was that out of the blue, Putin suddenly threats to nuke the world, right? That's how the Sun covered it. But what actually happened was the French president, Emmanuel Macron, said this week that the future deployment of, quote, Western ground troops in Ukraine should not be ruled out. And then this dude said this about NATO and Ukraine.
Yeah, and he's the what is he? He's the
current guy in charge of NATO.
Yeah, he's the chief.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure if chief was just like his.
Well, I don't think that's actually his charter. That's just how he described it.
The thing in there just says chief. So I was like, oh, okay.
What's up, chief?
And we are deepening our political ties through the NATO-Ukraine Council, where we consult and make decisions together. Ukraine will join NATO. It is not a question of if, but of when. As we prepare you for that day, NATO will continue to stand with Ukraine for your security and for ours.
So the entire conflict. Okay, so just to kind of rewind real quick, the entire conflict happened because in 2008, what's his name? Julian Assange released a diplomatic cable that he had gotten a hold of called Niet means Niet, which was a guy, Burns, actually, who became CIA director later, giving a diplomatic cable to the State Department saying, hey guys, this was actually a little bit before, this was like 2007 or something like that. Hey guys, the reddest of red lines is for us to try to get Ukraine into NATO, right? Russia, Putin, everybody. In fact, I think the cable says something like, I can't find anybody who doesn't think that it's the reddest of red lines. Like, if you do this, it will provoke a war. Mm-hmm. And they said this. And then in 2008, NATO got together and said, we're going to bring Ukraine into NATO. And they ignored that diplomatic cable that we know they received. They had the intel that said this will cause a war, and they went and they did it anyways. That guy is Jens Stoltenberg. He is he's a member of the Norwegian Labour Party, and he's currently the Secretary General of NATO. So not chief, but he is a chief. So I want to make that point. Like that was the provocation that created the conflict. Now you could say, hey, it shouldn't have been a provocation, but then there's a lot of other things we can debate about there, like what is the purpose of NATO and things like that. But for them to double down now and say, oh, we don't have the funding, Congress won't approve the funding, we can't do all these things, but we're still going to put out there, oh, we're going to put Western troops in NATO or in Ukraine to fight Russians directly. Oh, we're going to, all these things. Those are provocative things.
Yeah.
Right. And so then Putin came out and said, and this isn't me apologizing for it, it's disastrous and scary, but I can't, you have to look at someone like a rational actor. He's not just a crazy person for saying, hey, if you threaten me, I'm going to threaten you back with an escalation.
Totally. Well, I mean, there's this problem, right, with Western media, because everything that we were told around the Tucker Putin interview and everything we've been told, you know, since the start of the Ukraine war and probably even before that, but at least in present memory, is you can't trust what comes out of Putin's mouth. Mm-hmm. The guy is a liar. He's crazy. He's a war criminal. He's, you know, a brutal dictator. He murders his own people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And not to say that some of those things aren't true, right? But at what point do you go, okay, this guy is saying that this is the reason he's acting a certain way. We keep doing that certain thing. His actions keep leading the other direction, you know, to defend against that thing. At what point do you say, yeah, okay, maybe that is actually the case?
Well, not just that. You have the same people who say that are also psychologizing him as a crazy person, or saying, oh, his real psychology is just has the nature of a conqueror of Ivan the Terrible, and like kind of amorphosizes him into an embodiment of the entire Russian history. Like this is just the nature of them to go out and conquer other people. It's like, if you use that against any other person, it would be seen as racist and crazy, right? If you just said America's nature is to dominate the world, we'd be like, no, that's crazy.
Well,
right? And if anytime you say, oh, he's rationally responded to incentives that we would never tolerate, that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not what his statements are, right? That just has to do with how do human beings react to a negative incentive.
Totally. Well, to me, it seems like this is a decent example of that sort of accuse your enemy of the thing that you're doing thing, right? Like NATO is aggressing and doing the thing, crossing the reddest of red lines in, you know, offering NATO membership to Ukraine. And so very clearly now they're in response to that saying, oh yeah, Putin is the one who's actually doing the aggressing. It's not us. Don't look at us.
And Putin's been fairly straightforward of this. Like if you've listened to anything that he's done over the last 2 decades, he's very straightforwardly talking about, like back in 2008, he was talking about Western aggression coming up on their borders, and everybody just like laughed him off and called him crazy back then. But like, I come from kind of like the Mersheimer realist foreign policy view, generally speaking. And the very nature of states is survival. So what Putin's actions, everything right now, is the reason why he needs Crimea right now is because they need it for like the survival of the Russian nation right now, because it's so important that they have that port and the Black Sea access and all this stuff, right? And if we continue to encroach on that, it's going to lead Russia to have to take drastic actions, because if they don't have that, Russia suffers greatly, right? And it's very practical. Everything that he's doing, it makes a lot of sense if you just look at it through that lens.
You assume that they are rational actors and not just crazy, evil bad guys, right? And we rely on a media to tell us they're crazy, evil bad guys, to shut down our reason. And so we can't hold our own public officials accountable to what is obviously a provocation from them. Right, because they don't want to be held accountable.
And something that puts literally everyone on the planet at risk of extermination. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know how people, I mean, I think we take it pretty soberly and we talk about it openly, but like, dude, the risk of nuclear war is like very real. It's like, it's very real. Like, and there's no sign that NATO is like stopping or slowing on that path towards that outcome.
Well, and like the crazy thing too is Putin asked to be part of NATO at one point, which made it so that the entire purpose of NATO no longer really needed to exist. Like, NATO victory achieved, the Soviet Union's gone, Russia actually asked to be a part of it, which at that point you're like, okay, well there's actually no point of NATO anymore, right?
I have a question then to pose to you guys, if I may, really quick. Then what if NATO only existed to kind of oppose the Soviet Union, and then the Soviet Union fell and Putin wanted to join NATO, then why resist that? Why are they trying to preserve like a boogeyman, like this foreign enemy to fight? What's the point here? Why are we creating this conflict when there doesn't need to be one?
So the low level resolution picture to that is you need an enemy in order to sell weapons. The higher level, or the more refined, is from the collapse of the Soviet Union to the rise of Putin, is kind of a period where Russia became a client state of America in a lot of ways.
Meaning
London and New York finance got to take advantage of the privatization of Russian industry. With the rise of Putin, that there's a transition where they are at one point a client state and then another point no longer a client state. And it was during that transition period when Putin said, I would like to become that. And meanwhile, he is resisting them on some things. So it was, if Putin was a complete client of the United States and a controlled asset, then we would have kept NATO, but it'd be focused on Iran right now.
So you're saying that because Putin isn't just an overt, completely controlled puppet of the West, they have to depose him in some way and replace him with someone who is. It's a pursuit of complete control and power of Russia and probably the entire world.
Over the most important natural gas resources in the world. Right. That's the thing that you have to understand is Ukraine is the bottleneck of how gas gets from Russia to Europe. And it's the same thing as Russia gas going south through the Black Sea and other areas. Each one of those things are bottle points that need to be controlled if you want to dominate the world energy scene.
And actually what you said there, Joe, is what Putin said in that documentary series that Oliver Stone made. Putin had said something along the lines of, everybody else in the NATO Western alliance, they're basically vassal states to the United States. Russia joining NATO, we wouldn't necessarily have to be a vassal state, so that we could actually vote no on things. Like, and sometimes we'd agree, sometimes we'd disagree, and that would be part of the diplomatic aspect. But that is a no-go.
It would challenge U.S. hegemony or superiority within that.
Because everybody within NATO is a vassal state to the United States. Like, America's an empire with just a bunch of vassals, right?
They're also a competitor in the arms race, right? So American arms equip NATO, right? We have NATO specified rounds that we use for interoperability with all of their Western troops. Russia doesn't necessarily participate in that, right? So them being in NATO doesn't provide an avenue for our arms sales to NATO against Russian weapons. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So really, it's just about money and power.
Yeah, and energy.
Power.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
as
energy,
an aspect of those
quite
things.
Literally being power, but also
for both
leverage.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess another
money is a tool for power. Like, power, I think, is the end, the end of everything, right?
Yeah.
It's just like money, energy, all that stuff is tools that help you achieve power.
On the energy piece, just to keep going down this rabbit hole just a little bit. with so much attention being paid to green energy and shifting away from fossil fuels, what would be the incentive for the West to have control over natural gas?
Natural gas is the most green energy at the lowest cost you can get. The reason why America never signed the climate peace accords from Paris, but we were the only Western nation to comply with it, was fracking.
Can you dive deeper into that?
Fracking created an unexpected amount of abundance of natural gas, which has the lowest carbon output with the most consistent and easily transferable. Changing coal fire over to natural gas is a lot cheaper than changing from coal fire over to solar or something like that. And it's base load. It burns consistently. It doesn't matter what the weather is. And problems like that are easily solved with natural gas.
But wouldn't you say that the powers that be, who would probably be aligned with something like this NATO expansion, with sort of this global transition to green energy, right? At least the entities that pay lip service to that, are the ones that are also pushing renewables, solar, wind,
Kinda.
that sort of stuff, right?
I don't think they care as
Is
much.
it disingenuous?
Yeah, I think it's both, right? It's like they want to move this stuff over, but they have to compromise with the reality. Germany can't yet go as green as they want to. They're shutting down their baseload power, which is nuclear, and so they need enough different baseload power. Well, the best bet after that is probably natural gas, unless you want to go to coal. Like, what else are you going to use for baseload? Baseload is the power you get when you don't get other things.
Right.
What is there to fill in the gaps between them? You either have to use lithium-ion batteries, which on scale are very difficult to do on an industrial scale, and then second, some form of power like nuclear.
But if it were really about making the climate better, why would they shut down nuclear in favor of something that puts carbon into the atmosphere?
Oh, well, okay. So a couple things. So, number one, in America, at least the reason why has to do with the overregulation of nuclear, right? So there's kind of conflicts there. So the Obama administrations, for example, why we've had a deregulation of nuclear for experimental purposes for the new 4th and 5th generation reactors. So there's actually a pushback there that is compliant with that. But no, ultimately, if you want the real answer, the deep answer, the profound answer, the best person in this space is definitely Alex Epstein, who, in his case, Fossil Future and Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. And the answer is, the goal is not to prevent climate change. The goal is to eliminate human impact on the world, right? It's an anti-human philosophy.
It's a religion.
So
that's what I was going for.
Yeah.
I wanted that conclusion.
So nuclear is the triumph of man over atoms, right? So you can't have nuclear be your base load, right? Because it does create an off-put and it creates nuclear waste, right? And so you have that nuclear waste in France. So if you're French, you're saying, what do we do with this? Well, it's a lot easier to keep all that waste from the mining of cobalt in Africa. You never see that. So you just bring up and have, I just have a solar panel now. So now I can...
Oh, so it's really more about a displacement of the unpleasant byproducts of energy production versus actually doing what is maybe the most efficient per, unit of waste.
Well, and we're also giving them way more credit, right? We're saying that this is like something they're rationally thinking through when it's much more like an instinctual human psychological motivation.
You think so? It's less intellectual than they're not
weighing the trade-offs objectively. They're saying like, but there's nuclear waste. Yeah. Right. I'm not going to think through the waste of mining coal.
Why don't we just launch it into space? Come on, Elon.
That's what I always said. I always said, just throw it into the sun. Easy. It's a giant nuclear reactor, right? Like, why not throw the nuclear waste in the sun?
It's practically recycling at that point.
Well, you can't miss the sun too. It's huge. It's a giant gravity well. You just shoot it right at it.
I don't know.
You don't even need rockets.
Given our success rate, I think we could miss the sun.
And then hit ourselves as we're coming around the backside. Yeah, that'd be great.
Dope.
All right. So a couple of things that you mentioned there on the Tucker Carlson, for example, had some interesting news stories dropped this week as well. This was kind of on the counter side. Tucker Carlson was on Lex Friedman, and a news story dropped that there was an assassination attempt against him while he was in Russia.
That is so crazy.
Now, this is a big unknown. So I mentioned this because I think it's a good actual media literacy test. Because if you just saw the reporting, it would be like, breaking news. But the news was from a Russian YouTube channel called, in Russian, Counterterrorism, with 10 videos, all of which seem to be confessions from prisoners. So pretty sketchy.
Okay,
right?
yeah, not maybe the most trustworthy.
They look like they were filmed with like your Razor from like 2006.
Oh,
right?
best cell phone. Wanted one, never had one.
It went from that website to a Telegram account to a Russian blog called mvlenti.net. And then it actually broke bid because of an American blog called Intel Drop. So we have no corroborating information, no material evidence, no witnesses, the interviewer that's talking in it, or that is like he's talking to behind the camera, is completely unknown. And then no background on the subject. We have no idea who the person is. Other than that they say this person is confessing. And he sits there and he does confess to taking money from Ukrainian intelligence to plant a bomb and to kill.
I would suspect that it would cost more than $4,000 to go after Tucker.
Imagine how
that's what I just ran through an English translator on the blog right now, and it's saying that his Ukrainian handlers promised him $4,000 for the successful execution of the attack.
If I were Tucker, I'd be offended. I'd be like, "That's all?
Yeah, only
like,
$4,000?
Really? Come on,
like,
give me more than that."
Well, what's $4,000 in rubles?
I mean, it's
life savings.
Going to be a lot.
Yeah. So just think
Good question.
With the exchange rate and things like that, and if you're not that wealthy, $4,000.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So, do you think this is real then, given what we know about it right now?
There was an adverse reverse indicator. So when talking to Lex Friedman, Tucker Carlson said, asked if he was afraid while he was there, and he said, "Why would I be? I'm 54. My kids are grown. I believe in God. I'm almost never nervous." And like that's like a "I'm willing to die" sort of statement to me. It sounds like it's a lot more than just like, "Are you nervous to interview a very powerful leader?" Right? It's like that's like,
he says that
"Are
stuff
you
all the
nervous
time,
to die?"
Yeah, he says that stuff all the time, like that he's just not really worried about any of these things. He's just more naturally curious. Like that's the way that he's always been approaching this.
Yeah.
For the record, the exchange rate would be 366,000 Russian ruble for $4,000 US.
Okay,
that's a lot of rubles.
But there's just a lot of supply. Like I don't like. $4,000 is $4,000 at the end of the day. Like it could be,
sure.
like 10,000 would be a lot more than that. Right?
Yeah, true.
But it's not nothing.
Like $4,000 in rubles still doesn't get you like a whole lot of stuff, right? It's not like life-changing money to a Russian.
Well, it's life-changing money to Tucker Carlson. Come on.
A couple of things that he said on the Lex Friedman podcast I think are important to this conversation is that Tucker says that Putin seemed nervous, like he over-prepared for it, which I thought was interesting. I was like, yeah, I can kind of see that.
He came prepared with the documents to give Tucker.
Yeah.
Right? Like he wanted to go through that history.
Yeah.
Putin seemed nervous.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that the intelligence agencies probably leaked his leaving for interview and leaked his conversation. He never recorded an actual interview with Snowden, but he met with and had dinner with Snowden while he was in Russia. And they leaked to Semaphore, which is a website that has been accused of being an intel agency website, or at least industry plant, influence plant before. So Semaphore is just semaphore.com. It's, what was the definition of it again, Kyle? It's very interesting that you looked that up.
It was an interesting thing. It was like there's a computer science definition on it. I don't have it up anymore, but
it's like to control an asset or something like that.
The way to restricting access to common resources or something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't remember.
Pretty appropriate
up there anymore. It's just a funny naming convention.
But it says Semaphore, intelligent, transparent, global, and it's they say that they're about objective news and like increasing the quality of reporting and things like that. And they do have some stuff that I do like in the sense of like they do tend to put at the very top of their articles, here are the objective facts, and I've never really seen those be completely off. And then very specifically the reporter's opinion and then some like other narratives. That's their typical format, which I appreciate. But that's also, it's interesting that twice now we have two different indicators, both Elon Musk and, in this case, Tucker Carlson saying, no, they're an industry plan.
Worth noting just who founded it. I think the connections here are through Ben Smith, who former BuzzFeed. We've gone through this before. I don't have the information like off of the top of my head here, but because we talked about this before with a different group, the one out of the Netherlands. What is that group called? The media outlet. that is also like a CIA op.
Yeah.
Not Bellingcat?
Bellingcat,
yes.
There's connection, like there's these dudes from BuzzFeed that just are part of all of these things, and they have like deep ties to the DNC, deep ties to intelligence. I don't want to go too deep into it to like misspeak here, but there's stuff there that seems to be there.
Interesting.
So I don't have it at the top of mind at the moment.
Some capture, perhaps.
So Tucker's like, I told no one, but it was on Signal, and that they then got that information and leaked it to Semaphore that he met with Snowden.
Okay, so this is not the first time I've heard that Signal is not actually very secure. That it's like, run by a nonprofit or whatever, and that it's open source and this and that, but that also it's in some way infiltrated, or the nonprofit was funded by some CIA operation or something like that.
I'm not sure.
I've had conversations with tech guys too about Signal, and I got the same take that Tucker did when he talked in the Lex Friedman interview, that if it's a nation state, they can get into your signal.
Right.
But it's the same thing. Like if you listen to tech, like what is that tech expert's name? I'm just like spacing on people's names right now. There's a tech guy on Joe Rogan a while back, I remember, and he was talking about this, of like the means to be able to get into people's stuff now is so easy now. Like there's like whisper technology to be able to just like, you just need very basic information, and governments can just like, or these intelligence agencies can just get into them.
Right.
And the encryption doesn't really matter, because the end-to-end encryption, what matters is the transit of the message. But if you can just get into the phone, you can just see it.
You
so
can just record
if you
what's
just have
happening on the screen.
spyware on the phone, your signal doesn't matter.
Right.
Because they're not intercepting the message, they're just reading it off your phone.
And if you're Tucker Carlson, your keyboard is a spyware, right?
Yeah.
Or something on your
totally,
phone, right?
Totally. Well, and I've also heard as well, and I don't, I'm not a technologist, so the details here are a little fuzzy, but I heard someone else say that encryption, there's no encryption that doesn't have a backdoor for a government, right? Because how would a government ever let a private entity operate in their jurisdiction and have encryption that they couldn't break? Right.
Well, that was always kind of like the argument for why we shouldn't have encryption. In fact, there was huge encryption wars throughout the 1990s about the technology, specifically argued about that we couldn't allow that to happen. Additionally, and we've talked about this many times on the podcast, a couple times because I'm obsessed with it, is the Swiss company that turned out to be owned by the CIA that was providing all the encryption algorithms for the world. That said, encryption algorithms are open source, right? You can double check them, right? It's how you take something that is not encrypted and then turn it into a hash, like a randomized set of letters and numbers, to then unencrypt on the other side with a shared key, right? That technology, that method can be checked by other people. And so backdoors are unlikely in those cases. That said, it's not really the encryption that's a problem of transit. It's when it's actually
the device itself
taken apart on the inside of the device.
Yeah.
You guys want to know who has funding in Semaphore?
Yes.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Oh, interesting.
MasterCard, Pfizer, Qualcomm.
Just a who's who of brands I love.
It's interesting.
So the left also put out some propaganda.
Semaphore announced plans to repurchase Bankman-Fried's investments following the bankruptcy of FTX.
Oh, why? They're a media outlet. Why would they buy?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just reading.
Breaking news over here.
Dig in
just
on
reading
this.
things. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
So the left also had a bunch of propaganda come out, specifically to shame the right. Now, at the very bottom here, I had the Washington Post article, Kyle. I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at it. The title is, quote, Republicans used to back Ukraine, then came middle fingers in Alabama.
What?
Yeah, so this goes through a story of this lady. Her dad is Ukraine, and obviously she's Ukrainian because of that. Natalia, and she used to stand alongside a roadside saying support Ukraine. And then for a long time, everyone was like honking, doing great. And then one day, someone lowered their truck window and flipped her off. She's in Huntsville, Alabama. And it turns out that eventually Republicans are like, hey, we gave you a lot of money, and yet 5 million people came across the border this year, and we're a little upset about that we're worried about the borders of Ukraine but not protecting our own border. And so this whole thing goes through a giant, basically her drama of discovering that, her neighbors or only willing to give them a couple, tens of billions of dollars, maybe not hundreds of billions of dollars in the given fiscal year. So
I mean, how dare people be so selfish? Really?
It's kind of like it's said with like this finger wagging way. Like, how could you rednecks not care about the borders of Ukraine? And a couple other ones also came out.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why I think the messaging that you have from Republicans right now about why are we giving money to Ukraine to protect their borders instead of our own, right? Like, that's why I think that's so effective. It's just like such a real thing. We're like, yeah, why are we giving them $60 billion?
Well, it separates the foreign policy interest of the DC elite from the interest of America. Right. And once you do that, everything becomes very clear. You're like, oh, my God, our foreign policy decisions are not made to keep us safe. They're meant to enrich a certain select group of people who want to dominate the world and then claim that it's for America and our protection.
Well, did you guys see because this is something I've said on the podcast many times, that a lot of foreign policy is just masked by it's just masking money laundering. You guys see some of the videos that came out from Ukraine of like them like stashing like millions of dollars and people taking millions of dollars in like these boxes and things? Like there was videos on Twitter. Yeah.
No, you gotta add this to the Discord, buddy. We have not seen that.
There was a bunch of videos that were like this. So a former head of Ukrainian Regional Military Recruitment Office has been caught with $1 million hidden in shoe boxes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, there was the story of the $40 million that like very clearly got covered and confirmed by the press. Wow.
Good thing. How much is a plane ticket to Ukraine, you guys? You guys want to go treasure hunting?
Want to do some money laundering?
I'll be in the neighborhood in June.
Bennett, will you... Yeah, Bennett's on assignment coming up. Yeah, he's going to be...
We're going to miss you, bud.
He's going to be overseas fomenting some rebellion or something. Overthrowing a democratically elected leader.
Just doing a color revolution. Just casually.
A revolution of color, Kyle, please.
A revolution of color.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Zesty Beverages. They're on a mission to unf*** the standard American diet by crafting drinks with fewer calories and more nutrients from real food. Their lineup of delicious offerings now includes Electric Peak Yerba Mate, postbiotic sodas, keto-friendly, ready-to-drink margaritas, and hard teas. Wondering what a postbiotic soda is? Well, head on over to zestybev.com to learn more and find a retailer near you. Once again, check them out online at zestybev.com. That's ZESTYBEV.com.
So,
it's
and
like
lastly, we had to, really the question is like the Washington Post, no one reads the Washington Post except for liberals, right? So we have to get the conservatives to care about Ukraine again. Who do you roll out to get conservatives to care about Ukraine again?
Ben Shapiro.
So Ben Shapiro came out with this great little rant, about an hour long on a bunch of stuff, but he starts out with his Putin is settling all the family business.
I'm surprised they didn't put like a 19-year-old in front of him to debate.
Oh.
I was surprised by that.
Got him.
One of the great qualities of dictatorship is that dictators can hold the line even as democracies start to fade. That, of course, is the theory of pretty much every dictator across history when faced with a democratic rival. That is certainly the theory of Vladimir Putin today, whether it is in Ukraine,
take my headphones off.
or whether it's with regard to him just killing the people who oppose him, people like Alexei Navalny. And it is becoming very clear this week that Vladimir Putin is now settling all things.
Alexei Navalny, I don't know how Ben Shapiro knows this. He can say it with such conviction, right? I appreciate that about him, right? Isn't it impressive how he can just say, he killed Alexei Navalny? Well, we don't know. We don't know.
I mean, a Mossad agent would probably know, right? Yeah, I'm kidding.
If he's, well, that's
kidding, kind of.
If he's an intel agent, he should probably let us know how he knows this, and that's the real challenge that I have with his podcast in this sense. At this point, is his inability to actually give me how he knows this. He doesn't give an argument here. He just says, "This is obviously he did because he's in Russia and he's in a Russian prison, and therefore, Putin. Why would Putin do this right now? Why?" You have the funding. Okay, so let me get this straight. You are in charge of the Russian Federation. You're fighting a war against America, not Ukraine, against America and the American taxpayer base. And the American taxpayer base has a funding bill of $68 billion that has passed the Senate is being weighted on the House. And you're going to think, oh, right now is a good time for me to kill and take care of my family business. What reason? What are you talking about? Do you think he's just like an idiot?
And build this rallying cry for the supporters of this bill to say, yeah, look, he's such a bad guy. We need to get back at him for this.
Well, that obviously doesn't mean it wasn't Putin, but you would have to have an argument for why he's an idiot. Yeah. Or it just happened because, as we found out this week from Ukrainian intelligence was reporting that it was leaked to the press that it was a blood clot.
So maybe he took the jab.
Well, his dude,
you gotta give yourself the air horn on that one.
I'll take it.
His evidence is that everyone else is saying that it happened. That's all the evidence that you need.
Yeah,
everyone else is saying
MSNBC,
but they don't matter.
Right.
Like everybody is saying Putin is a ruthless dictator. He's a thug. He kills his political opponents, and you just repeat the NPC mantra.
Well,
right? and that's all you need.
And even if you don't care about the funding of Ukraine as the Russian state, you would care about the Munich Security Conference going on right now.
Tell me more.
This last week, there's just European leaders getting together to talk about collective security for Europe. Why would you kill your political rival then? And if he's in a secret work camp in Russia, couldn't you kill him without anyone knowing?
You'd think.
And then release the information at the right time that it benefits you? Like there's just so many questions here. And it isn't that I say that I have a better sense of the situation than this potential Mossad agent, but rather because this is because of a rumor that went around at Breitbart. I'm actually joking. I don't know if he is, but go ahead. I'm just saying that we don't know.
Yeah. Well, with all of this, do you think the incentives exist for the West to have played a role in facilitating the demise of Alexei Navalny in order to make it look like Putin did it at a perfectly opportune time?
The question is just like, can you get into a remote Russian work camp to give someone a poison that would create a clot?
That's the whole purpose of spies.
I mean, you've heard of...
Could you imagine that you're the spy? They're like, okay, we want you to sneak into a Russian work camp in Siberia. And you're like...
You're a spy who's
America.
already...
Like, I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying, like, it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
You've already been captured.
It's like, what's the highest likelihood? Right.
Yeah. Occam's razor, right?
I think there's a likelihood. Like, there's definitely a likelihood of that.
Yeah. It's possible.
Like, if the game is all about, like, all game theory is just about, like, narrative control.
Yeah.
And if you can control the narrative and get it to go in a certain direction in this moment, like, this is a terrible moment for Navalny to die.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely a possibility or a likelihood that some state actor would do it, or somebody that's an opponent of Putin, or whatever.
Right. Internal to the state of Russia.
Like, it could be
That
anything.
makes sense.
Like,
I mean, it could
doesn't
be
have to be the CIA.
Could be a Jewish space blood clot laser.
Could be. Could be.
I mean,
should have painted the house blue.
God, we are absolutely going to get banned from everything.
Yeah, but that's a lot of different memes all in one little sentence right there.
I was going to say, Joe, we might need to explain that one for some of our audience.
They saw our Maui fires.
If you didn't catch our Maui coverage or much about the Maui thing, right? The conspiracy theory, the most, I think, outlandish and popular one is that there were Jewish space lasers that lit the island on fire.
But there's been videos going around, and Biden made a comment at a press thing talking about, and then the houses that were blue were there.
No. He said
the blue roofs.
He said, yeah, like it'll be total devastation. There's one house standing because they had the right roof. The right roof.
It
was very
He didn't say
strange.
what the right roof was.
Which it's just
could have just been.
I'm
like,
just saying. I read the Book of Exodus.
Go on.
This is the story of Passover. You put the lamb's blood on the door, and the spirit does not kill you.
That's how you avoid the space lasers.
That's how you avoid the space
blue
lasers.
roofs.
I'm going right home to paint the roof of my condo.
Anyways, let's continue watching Ben Shapiro hawk for.
Nah, I'm good.
Family business. This is the week where he feels like he has the ability to do exactly what it is that he wants. And the reason he feels that way is because of a combination of splits on the right in the United States and a combination of splits on the left in the United States, as well as splits in the European coalition with regard to Russia. When Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, there was pretty much unanimity that this was not something that the West could allow to stand. That you couldn't have Vladimir Putin simply waltzing into Kyiv, taking over the country, killing Vladimir Zelensky, and essentially setting up a puppet dictatorship and turning Ukraine into a second Belarus. You couldn't have that because it would put Russia directly on the borders of a wide variety of NATO countries, including Hungary and Poland. You couldn't have it.
You can't have Russia right next to all of our bases in NATO. That seems right.
How dare they put their country there?
Wait, didn't we just add Finland and are trying to add Ukraine to NATO, which would then be right next to Russia?
Yeah, right. It's like 2014 just never happened to Ben Shapiro. Like he fell asleep that year. He woke up in 2015. He doesn't know. He doesn't know that we overthrew. Okay, so 2014 is interesting too because one of the things I read about this week was how the guy who was in charge, who got democratically elected at the beginning of the year, basically that he had, deals that he was going to basically turn privatize various different entities of energy that moved Russian gas. And he was going to allow them to become privatized and not sell them to Western interests.
Oh,
Mike Benz. Really interesting reporting on that stuff. So assuming that's correct, and it's very interesting to check out Mike Benz's stuff. We've posted on him before. His claim is that there was a very specific energy company that was being sold off and that this guy wasn't participating in negotiations and went back on his word to basically give this to London and New York financing.
Interesting.
And so that's what provoked 2014. And so everything came out of that money deal.
I mean, that would track, right, with the whole power, money, influence incentive for, the NATO allies to want to overthrow someone. I mean, similar to Gaddafi in Libya, right? He was going to
Iran.
I mean, there's a lot of very similar situations where this has occurred.
Right. Yeah. So very interesting that he would kind of reverse that around for his audience and make the point like, you can't have Russia overthrowing some country and installing a friendly dictatorship.
How dare you?
We have cables from our own government saying that this is what we did.
Right,
You want to keep going?
No, I'd rather not. Joe. I'd rather not. Bennett, just really quick, you like to listen to podcasts on 2x speed. Could you listen to Ben Shapiro on 2x speed?
He speaks at 2x speed.
Or would your head explode?
That's his baseline.
Because it would certainly threaten former Soviet satellite states like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all of which are deeply fearful of a Putin-led incursion into their territory, Finland as well. You couldn't have it because Ukraine actually is a relatively major producer of products like wheat and oil. And mostly you couldn't have it because Vladimir Putin has interests that are antithetical to those of the West. And for all of the talk about over the last 25 years about how Vladimir Putin was just on the cusp of moderating, how there was going to be a moment when Vladimir Putin was welcomed into the family of nations and then he would just be nice to everybody. That never happened. Every single president of my lifetime has tried a reset with Vladimir Putin. George W. Bush famously looked in.
Like I said, like why couldn't he just be normal? Why couldn't he just join the people of the world?
The eyebrows.
Like you gotta just not look at Russian history, right? Like you just ignore that at the collapse of the Soviet Union that there was tensions between America and the people who lived in Russia because, real quick, bring up the murder rate of Russia at that time. It skyrockets after the collapse of the USSR.
Really?
Yes. It became far more likely to die by killing after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Why? Cartels. Large gangster cartels rise up from in the power vacuum and start trying to control things. And if you listen, like for example, Scott Horton makes the case that the CIA and various different agencies using Western money cartelize their economy. And then do that. Yeah, we would never do that. Never mind, we did that many, many times, such as, for example, using Western, intelligence agencies and things like that to control South America. We did that all throughout the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And we know this, right? Confessions of an Economic Hitman document a bunch of those, but you can also check out things like the CIA's use of many of these things in places like Guatemala on behalf of United Fruit, which resulted in almost 50 years of civil war.
Yeah.
So that like the Devil's Chessboard is a great book about that. You can check that out. Were you able to bring it up, Kyle?
There's so much information.
Oh, the Wikipedia just shows it. Once you get to like 1992, it just the death rate goes way up. Anyways, look it up yourself. Let's keep watching Ben Shapiro.
No.
Talk about this. I just want to get to the
Putin's eyes
part.
And thought he had a sense of his soul. And then you had Barack Obama, who literally sent Hillary Clinton, his Secretary of State, to Moscow to give them a button that didn't actually say reset, but was supposed to be a reset button. And then you had Vladimir Putin being offered flexibility by Barack Obama in 2012 in the lead up to the 2012 election. And then Donald Trump came into the office, and the basic assumption was that Donald Trump was going to lead to a warm relationship with Putin. And now you have Joe Biden, who came into office and was immediately pretty soft on Russia in terms of sort of geopolitical strategery.
Pause right
as George
there.
W. Bush once put it.
In what world was Joe Biden soft on Russia at the beginning of his presidency? Come on. The guy...
Go off, Queen.
I mean, come on. They spent 4 years. The Democrat Party, Joe Biden machine, spent 4 years claiming their political opponents were tools of Russia. You know, like, in what way would... I mean, and actually, funny, this week, actually, what's his name from Public? Matt Taibbi came out with an article saying that reminding everybody that in 2016, actually, Hillary Clinton was the choice of Russia, not Donald Trump. Yeah, because she was seen as a continuation of like the status quo and more reliable and less unknowable where they're going to go. Right. So like these things that is so crazy for him just to say that, just like, wow, well, everyone who isn't me was wrong about Russia. What are they resetting from? What are they trying to set a new direction from? Well, this is because Putin was a deviation from the guy before him. What's his name? Yeltsin? No. Oh God, not Yeltsin. That's not the word.
The drunk guy. I forget his name.
The drunk guy. Yeah.
He was like a deep alcoholic.
Am I right? Well, they all.
He gave the position to Putin.
I was jokingly gonna say Boris. Is it Boris
Yeltsin?
No.
Okay.
Oh no. Yeah. Boris Yeltsin.
Yeah, 91 to 99. You're right. Boris Yeltsin. We were right. I was right. I was right off the bat.
Nailed it.
Boris.
It's so cliche.
Okay, so
I know we had Natalia earlier. I'm like, what is this? 007, like GoldenEye on 64. Great game, by the way.
So I know we're belaboring the point a little bit, but I just want to make the point. I just the reset was to go back to the Yeltsin years from the Putin years. Putin comes in to change the Yeltsin dynamic that was a problem in Russia. From their perspective, they didn't like it, what we were doing throughout the 90s in Russia and what we were doing, everything from, the international dynamic was changing throughout the 1990s into the late 90s, into the 2000s that were creating tensions. They wanted to go back to the 90s, not to go back to the USSR. What are they resetting? You think in 2011, when Hillary Clinton went to Russia and did the thing with the reset button, that she was trying to reset? When was she trying to reset to?
Good question.
Like, he's not answering. Obviously, it was to the time when we would prefer, which was the time when they were a vassal state. Right? They wanted a time where we were friendly relations. We only didn't have friendly relations because they weren't listening to us anymore. So that's my beef with that.
Also, I have a question. I didn't realize this, but just looking at the presidents, I didn't realize Putin wasn't president from 08 to 12. Dmitry Medvedev.
Yeah, that was a short time where he stepped down.
So when she went in 2011, Putin wasn't.
I can't remember exactly what year that Hillary Clinton did that trip. Okay. I could be wrong about the year.
And this is the kind of conspiracy around it that the American government puts out, is that he was still technically the president. Okay. It's just the guy was a puppet. It's like that's what the Americans say about it. Whether or not that's true, who knows?
Yeah, it's I think it was from a similar faction, though, if I remember right. That's where that's got some basis.
Yeah. Putin himself says that the guy was fully independent, right? But then you have to take Putin's word. Who really knows?
Yeah. Who's really in charge of the U.S. government right now? Biden.
Yeah. It's like saying Biden's fully independent. We all know Obama's actually the president.
But it is an interesting thing. It's just like Putin has been around since 2009 because and Putin was actually appointed the presidency from the former who resigned, who was Boris Yeltsin.
Interesting.
Putin was the prime minister at the time, and he was appointed the presidency.
Appointed. Yep. I am the president now.
All right, keep going.
Now, that take has been proved false time and time again. Vladimir Putin is a highly intelligent, highly skilled adversary of the United States. His interests do not align with the interests of the West. The chief Russian motivation, and this has been true for literally centuries, is territorial ambition. This has been true since the time of Peter the Great and Catherine the Great. I mean, if you want to go back even further, this has been true since Ivan the Terrible. And the fact is that if you look at Russian history or have any sense of Russian history, Russia's great leaders are always measured by the amount of land they control. which makes a certain amount of geopolitical sense if you are Russia, because, again, Russia is a giant step, meaning it is open to invasion from all sides. And so if you're Russian, one of the things that historically you have attempted to do is expand your borders so as to prevent invasion from all sides. Now, at a certain point, that defensive justification becomes an offensive strategy in which you're invading sovereign nations that exist all around you and attempting to control top down. But Russia has always been an empire since the time of Muscovy. And now you are watching as Vladimir Putin tries to expand the boundaries of what he sees as his new empire. I mean,
they've been this way for 1,000 years, and they just can't change.
Just how they are. I just can't understand why they just can't be at peace. They have to invade everybody around them.
Himself compared himself to Peter the Great just a couple of years ago after the invasion of Ukraine.
So,
and when you watch the interview that he did with
the great joke on this, this is like if Donald Trump compared himself to Andrew Jackson. It doesn't mean he scalped an Indian. It's a great joke. But it's a great point, right?
Yep.
Just because he said he was like Peter the Great doesn't mean he actually has the same policies, or habits or whatever or anything to it. Ridiculous.
Do we need more of Ben Shapiro?
Well, I was only thinking I wanted to get to the blowback point, which I think is coming here in a minute.
Okay.
Tucker Carlson, where the first 35 minutes is dedicated to his idea of Russian claims to Ukraine, in which he actually sort of makes the claim that Russia has claims to Poland and Hungary as well.
He doesn't do that.
When he says that sort of stuff, we ought to take that seriously. He's actually spelling out what he actively thinks. Now, there are a bunch of people on the left who think that Vladimir Putin is doing this because he is offended by the muscularity of the West, that if only the West had been more conciliatory toward Vladimir Putin, then Russia would not, in fact, be an adversarial force. That everything that Vladimir Putin does is blow back to the West. That is the theory of people on the left who are very much vacillating with regard to what Vladimir Putin is trying to do. And then there are a couple of theories on the
left. Right. Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Yes.
He has to say, Tucker Carlson fans, you're on the left now.
Right. So he's trying to frame this sort of like rational perspective of, well, maybe we should take him at his word. And it's so funny how he goes from one point, don't believe what he's saying, to the next point, we need to believe what he's saying. It's bizarre. But so basically he's trying to frame conservatives that don't agree with him as being on the left.
Yes. Well, he's actually trying to take people who listen to him, who like his opinion, as saying like, oh, okay, I need to think it's suspect when I hear blowback theory. Or when I hear saying, oh, he's responding to the incentives that America has established for him, that's a leftist rationale. Because if America's just too muscular and he just doesn't like how muscular we are, or something, I don't understand. I mean, I think I understand his point of view, but he's so busy trying to cast everything in a false light. I can't get past that. It's hard for me to.
Yeah, I can't believe he goes from, when he says, he wants to invade Hungary or whatever, like we should take him at his word. That's him telling us what he wants to do. And then in the next breath, he's like, but he also says that if the West were more conciliatory or were more like willing to make a deal, he wouldn't be in this position. He wouldn't be acting so aggressive. But we can't believe him saying that, but we should believe him saying the other thing.
It's a false argument too. The argument isn't that we should have been more conciliatory. Our argument is we shouldn't have overthrown a democratically elected government in 2014, and we shouldn't have invited them to NATO. That's our argument. When he said only a year before he invaded, hey, all I want is writing that you wouldn't put Ukraine in NATO or NATO in Ukraine. That's what I want. Just do that in writing. And we said no. Then he invaded. That's all. Is that conciliatory? Is that us not being muscular? That's us saying, hey, you have this red line and we're going to respect it.
Yeah.
This is also how you do narrative control over a group and you co-opt a group is by adjusting the framing. This is what Bill Buckley did with National Review and completely co-opted conservatives on foreign policy, mind you, right? And it completely changed the dynamic of conservatives and how they viewed foreign policy was during the Bill Buckley National Review era. But that's what he's doing right here is he's framing of what is left, what is right, and saying, if you're on this, you're not part of the team anymore. And he's trying to muster those people that are kind of wishy-washy, they don't know where they are, and being like, that guy's siding with your enemies. You shouldn't be taking that, right?
This is so interesting to me too, because it's like there's no better subject to control than foreign policy, because it's something that's so far removed from most people's lives that we have to take the media's word in some respect on what's happening, because we can't all go to the front lines in Ukraine and actually see what's happening, see who's winning.
It's very Orwellian, right? In 1984, everybody was alliances were changing in the foreign obscure world that's elsewhere, and there's like, oh, now we're at war with Eurasia. Well, no, we've always been at war with Eurasia, right?
Right.
It's very Orwellian dynamic.
When 10 seconds ago it was it was the other one. Forget the other one.
Right. So if you take from the conversation with Putin, he's justifying why he is Ivan the Terrible and wants to conquer the world. Right. If that's what you take from his argument about how Ukraine and Russia and Poland, all these places are all Slavic and how they all have this interrelated relationship with each other that goes a long ways back. If what you take from that is he's arguing for why he should control everything, you might be a neocon. Right. Like you are a neoconservative. Like you see the world as everyone wants to be rule of the world and take America's place as rule of the world. And only we get to be ruler of the world. Everyone else is a threat to that. So therefore we are at war with everyone. That idea is foreign to the conservative way of thinking of government. The conservative, the founding document of conservatism is Edward Burke's notes on the French Revolution, where he says you can't change human nature by effort. You can't just come in, overthrow the king, and interrupt all the genealogy of evolution that created. He didn't use the word evolution, but the connection between generations that created all these institutions, and just restart. It won't work. And in fact, he predicts the Great Terror. He predicts murder and mayhem and all the chaos that created later the French Empire, and they became exactly what they tried to stop. Just an atheist version of it. So like that conservative insight that there's something there that can't change, that applies to foreign policy too. And we did that consistently on Kyle's point for the old right coming out of FDR's regime was saying foreign policy is another thing. We can't change Korea. We can't change Vietnam. We can't change what these people think with military power. And that's why we're going to fail here. And then we couldn't. Right? I mean, like we can't impose our vision on the world and just create that. And then additionally, you have all the perverse incentives that go along.
Well, there's also this old Cold War mantra that came from the neocons, which is democracies don't fight democracies. So, which is why we need to make the world safe for democracy, because you got to make everybody a democracy. But what they actually mean, because democracy doesn't really mean anything, right? Like it's a meaningless phrase now.
Especially when you have intelligence agency and fairness.
What they mean is our vassal states don't attack our vassal states. We need all of the vassal states so that we can control and we can create peace because they're all under us, right? That's the actual dynamic. The democracy thing is just the mythology that you get to weave the necessity of control over the vassal states.
Mm-hmm. So Ben just gets to just skip over all that. Skip over all the failures of the Middle Eastern policy that he advocated for. Everything that he's been drilling on foreign policy for all these years that is blowing up in our face right now and has continued to fail. Everything from Iraq and Syria and Libya and Somalia. This is the face you should be making.
That's such a good face. Such a good freeze.
Good freeze frame.
Why anyone listens to this dude on foreign policy is amazing to me, because he's not seriously engaged with it. He's here to
he's seriously engaged with it. He's just a propagandist on it. He's a neocon.
Yeah.
He is doing what the neocons want him to do, and he is a neocon when it comes to foreign policy. He's engaged with it very seriously. So everything is, you're supposed to, the art of states and manipulating groups is about weaving sophistry for your narratives. That's what you have to do. And he's doing it very well.
So send this podcast to your Ben Shapiro listening friends and say, stop listening to that neocon. It's ridiculous. So
yeah.
Next up,
you know who else takes foreign policy very seriously?
Transition. Man, you guys made me tell the joke off the bat. Now we're going to go here with it.
So I guess going into that, there was a guy who self-immolated in front of the Israeli embassy in DC over the course of this last week. 25-year-old serviceman in the U.S. Air Force, Aaron Bushnell. He live streamed his own self-immolation on Twitch. And he was protesting what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers. And he was saying that I will no longer be complicit in genocide.
To be fair, extremely tragic, and graphic, and the videos out there online for people to watch, which I think is, it's really hard to watch it. I only watched parts of it.
Yeah, I watched the video.
Hard.
Yeah, he's screaming "Free Palestine" like a dozen times as he's just like burning there, and you have cops coming in because like cops had noticed that he was acting strange on the lead up to it, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" And then he just like dumps the gas on him. Yeah, it was.
It's very disturbing. It's a sad tale, right? I mean, like the think pieces about it. I mean, it's sad from so many different angles, right? It's sad that he found that this was his way to like make his life worth something, like the meaning, and to do that, and then to, you know, in a way that would end his life is so tragic and horrible. It's tragic.
I think it is worth noting his kind of background here is that he grew up Christian conservative, became a member of Antifa in his like early adulthood, and became this like socialist anarchist type. Had a lot of his philosophical inspiration seemed to be Max Stirner, which is like kind of a very broad brand of anarchism around with like labor and stuff like that, kind of like old school anarchism, I guess. But it's not actually the first self-immolation in America over this. Back in December, there was a woman that self-immolated in front of the Israeli consulate in Atlanta. So just a couple months ago too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not the first one.
I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, that one did not make the news in the way that this one did.
Yeah. Worth noting, though, is that Bushnell actually claimed that he had classified knowledge of U.S. forces fighting in Gaza tunnels.
There was some interesting reporting from the Intercept. No, not from the Intercept, from Blumenthal's stuff.
Blumenthal had this here. Let me get Ben Shapiro off the screen.
No, leave that.
Please get him off.
But no, I remember when he reported this from the White House some time ago. Biden took this picture with special forces agents. Give it go down a little bit.
Yeah. I'm just saying, so there is. He claimed this, right? But then the White House actually deleted an Instagram post, which was Biden congratulating this, and this is in October, by the way. So this was like late October is when this Instagram post was. The White House said, in Israel, President Biden met with first responders to thank for their bravery and the work they're doing in response to the Hamas terrorist attack.
Yeah, it turns out those guys are like Delta Force, which they're not supposed to put online at all.
Yeah, they're supposed to not exist.
Yeah.
Well, in the official narrative is that we're not doing that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's kind of the important
It's double, right? It was a screw up because they put them online, right? Obviously, this was done by some political staffer. And second, that, obviously it's quite sensitive that they actually had troops on the ground within days after October 7th operating in Gaza, American troops.
Yeah. So, and the media around this has been very interesting. Like, none of the headlines that I'm seeing from any major news outlet, they're all just like, man sets himself on fire in front of embassy, but they don't mention why. Everything's supposed to is like framing him as a crazy person, and maybe he's a crazy person.
I mean, it's a fairly extreme act to light oneself on fire for any cause, and not to speak at all about the validity of the cause or otherwise. That's just an extreme act to take, and you have to wonder, like, what radicalizes a guy to go from one side of the spectrum of political thought, right, Christian conservative upbringing, to becoming Antifa and then a socialist anarchist?
I think that route is pretty common because you go to college and a lot of people become Antifa, socialists. Not necessarily all the way,
thinking
but
more progressively,
becoming more socialist,
thinking more leftist, but like Antifa is like a very like hardcore activist component of sort of the left.
But think of this when he would have been that age. So he's 25 now. So he's 3 years younger than me. I'm trying to think. This would have been 2018-ish is when that would be happening, right? Antifa at that point in time was still kind of like
it wasn't as prominent as it became during the BLM.
Yeah, that being said, Antifa, they were ransacking DC during the Trump inauguration in 2016,
okay,
right?
Yeah,
but the media, remember, this is also the time of this is before mostly peaceful protests and all this stuff, right?
Right. And these would be the years when you had Antifa and the Proud Boys fighting in the street all the time. All that kind of stuff was very 2016.
Sure,
that happened all the time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it, that there's at least a part of this that's really tragic, and this NBC News example is interesting. You see that the title is just U.S. Airman dies after fire protest, right? And we don't have to watch it, but they don't really talk about his thing, like what his message was. And we go down below it, it actually mentions, "You are not alone," calling the suicide hotline, as if this was just a way that the guy committed suicide, not like carrying the point of his message, which is the point of his message was the U.S. government is supporting a genocide in Israel. And I am so outraged by that, I'm going to commit suicide to draw your attention to it. And then there's obviously a very much, and I don't know where it's motivated from. Is it motivated from like, we don't want to draw attention, so there's not conversions to his point of view here? Or we don't want copycat sort of activity from young people who maybe are having a mental crisis?
That is the question, because like if you go to any news outlet, all the headlines are like the exact same thing, and it's just like this, where they're not mentioning Gaza at all. It's just man kills himself. Like that's basically all it is.
Yeah, protest against Israel is another way to put it, which is like not Gaza, not genocide, not, I mean, and I'm saying the word genocide very specific because that's the word he used. Mm-hmm. And number two, you have the recent developments from the International Court of Justice that said, that there's a probable cause here of a G word happening, right? And I'm not saying that there is, but that there's like...
You just said it.
We've said genocide multiple times on this podcast. You don't have to censor yourself.
I'm only thinking because Ben Shapiro is not watching. And I want him to be offended.
I would actually, let's react to Candace Owens. I thought that she had a very interesting take here. She has, she kind of goes into this idea of the classified information as well and talks about that. And I find her to be having a much more sober take on this. It's not very tribal on like picking a side or anything. Like I think it's useful dialogue to see from her.
Aaron Bushnell, who self-immolated, and his final words were pertaining to saying that he wanted to draw attention to a genocide which was happening in Palestine. Obviously, this made this a politically hot issue. We know how politically hot it is. You can't say anything about Gaza. You can't say anything about Israel without being called an anti-Semite, without being called pro-Hamas. And I don't like any of it. It's all filth, right? Only when you are fearful of engaging in a debate do you name call. There's no reason to do that. Just present facts. That's all you have to do. Present facts. Be willing to have a discussion. If you're going to sit behind on your typewriters and just name call, it's giving 9/11 vibes where something horrific happened. And then any person that asks questions about what our government was doing thereafter was just called pro-terrorist, right? You support terrorism in the Middle East. It's like, no, I am a human being and I demand to have a discussion. I have a thinking brain. And I understand that I am going to work so that my tax-paying dollars are funding things overseas, which means we have a right to know what is happening overseas. Well, New York Post, I know we've been following them. I think they've done a really good job of letting us know what happened with Aaron Bushnell, because people are obviously concerned because it pertains to somebody that was actively serving in the military. Well, they've done an update on this story, and apparently Aaron Bushnell's best friend, one of the last people that he spoke to, his name is Jack Morfitt, is saying that Aaron Bushnell had never violated. He had obviously clearance. He understood what was happening at the top, but he never violated that clearance. He never shared classified information with him ever until a phone call in which Aaron Bushnell claimed that he had secret knowledge of U.S. troops fighting in tunnels under Gaza just hours before setting himself on fire in an extreme act of protest. That is according to, again, the New York Post. Apparently, the airman served in the Air Force's 70th Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Wing, but also interacted with anarchist groups online and ranted that he had top secret clearance for military intelligence data. So, this is a quote from his friend. He said, he told me on Saturday that we have troops in those tunnels, that it's U.S. soldiers that are participating in the killings. His actual job involves the processing of intelligence data. Some of what he was processing had to do with the Israeli-Gaza conflict. One of the things that he told me, again, this is his friend that I'm quoting, is that coming across his desk was the U.S. military was involved in the genocides going on in Palestine, the friend said, referring to Israel's war against the Palestinian terror group Hamas in Gaza. He told me that we had troops on the ground, that they were there and were killing large numbers of Palestinians. There's just too many things that I don't know, but I can tell you that the tone of his voice just had something in it that told me that Aaron was scared. I've never heard that tone come out of him. He then went on to say the friend does not support Hamas in any way, shape, or form, and that he was surprised by the phone call because Aaron had never previously violated his military clearance at all. Again, going back to quote.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing, because that's something I haven't really been hearing in this talk here, is that, at least according to the guy's friend, is that it's like he saw something, and that's what triggered him to do this, is because he saw that there was U.S. involvement in like the slaughtering of Palestinians, right? And that's where he had this like moral quandary at the time.
Interesting.
The guy also, he had a bunch of like anonymous social media accounts, I guess, too. It was like Ace being, he's Air Force guy. I can't remember what they were called, where he was tweeting out about, or not tweeting, it was Reddit posting about a bunch of things around just basically him talking about how he's going to be leaving the Air Force soon because he can't handle the stuff that he's been having to do and the stuff that he's been having to see. So yeah, there's those dynamics around this too, right?
It's very strange, especially when you compare to how the right, the Israel supporters on the right have talked about this. For example, one I was reading was saying, this is just an example, just like how American youth are bored, right? And so we need a cause, and we're so desperate for a cause because we don't have God in our lives, that therefore we do this sort of thing to get attention. And it's just like, you're just stealing all of his moral agency, all of his outrage, all of the things that he was like legitimately had concerns about, and you're just covering it over as like, it's just like millennial listlessness.
Well, I mean,
as if this is the first time this has ever happened.
I think probably, more of what it speaks to is the fact that for someone who is maybe even in such a position of authority, in the sense that he has clearances, he has knowledge that most people don't have, that he also simultaneously feels like he has so little ability to do anything about it or to bring it to light without doing something so extreme. And I think that's probably more pervasive than just this case, and it might be part of the reason why the media is addressing it in such a way as to kind of try to keep his real intentions under wraps, right? His actual views and the reason why he did this, so that it doesn't, inflame this feeling that I think is latent throughout perhaps a generation or multiple generations and throughout society more broadly.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people don't feel like they're in control of their own lives. I mean, how can you feel in control when your Congress is just spending tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars on borders around the world and on conflicts everywhere? And if you live in Texas and you've got, migrants streaming across the border and invading your own backyard, or you can't afford to put groceries on the table, or you can't afford to put gas in your car, whatever it might be. I mean, people honestly probably feel very, very out of control. And meanwhile, the United States government is sending your money to go do something that you vehemently disagree with across the world. Like that's a terrible thing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, one of the things that I've always felt like that people could best kind of orientate themselves to is, that sense of hope is one of your best avenues for real protest, right? That I don't live in a free country in many ways that I find disgusting. So I'm going to be as free as I can. And I'm going to use my voice, use my freedom to as carefully as I can articulate the truth as I see it. And that is how I become a true person of rebellion, right? And the final end that obviously that this gentleman, Aaron Bushnell, which I'm sure I disagree with on many things, can't help but feel just like a sense of like, man, it would have been a better use of your time and effort to, tell the public about what you're doing in a Snowden way, in a many other way. Even the Discord leaker guy did a lot for that. And he actually got convicted this week. I don't know if you guys know.
Did he really?
Yeah, well, he pled guilty. So that trial's over.
Well, I think there is a question of like, was this effective for his cause, for his stuff? Because as far as I'm seeing, I don't really like. I think he's just gonna be relegated to being a Wikipedia article, and
that's tragic.
That's all it really is. Like it doesn't seem like, you know, like if you're going to self-immolate, don't mean to laugh about it, but like if you're going to self-immolate, you should do it. It would be better to do so at a more narratively appropriate time, probably. Otherwise, you just like your martyrdom is for nothing, right?
That is part of one of the ones that's really strange about it, right? Is because like once you've done the deed, it's kind of in everyone else's hands now, and then like the way that the media controls the dialogue and the way that people react to it will determine your legacy.
Yeah. Well, granted, like, so I just pulled up, there's videos of, let's just pull up, but let me just put it low volume here.
We can talk over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So audio and listeners, we got a trash can on fire, military veterans burning their uniforms.
You have military veterans burning their uniforms. You had there was, I believe in this crowd on this one, there was a old Vietnam vet that burned his uniform.
I thought the fire went out there, but like a little bit.
They just keep putting it up.
They're just slightly fire retardant.
But so this was happening kind of all over the country. There's a bunch of these like vigil protests here, but yeah, you get the picture.
I mean, you can't. I mean, I can't imagine the will to light yourself on fire like that and then to burn like that and then just make your message like that. Like I can't imagine it. And like to respond with anything other than, I mean, obviously, I told a joke about it up front and things like that, but it's like, man, it's like you laugh so you can't cry because it's such a fucking tragedy.
Exactly.
I mean, and then additionally the other story that came out of this is that people on the left, and you want to bring up the tweet, Kyle, on the left, try to memorialize them by saying rest in power. And then that became the controversy about whether or not it was appropriate because he was white to use the term rest in power to describe. And this is, I don't know if it's a mock account or.
I really can't tell.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell.
John Paul or Dr. John in this.
And this is just the classic, the left eating their own because of
there's so many examples
woke
of
moralizations here.
Right.
Is you can't use rest in power for a white man because it's a black terminology or whatever. It's classic.
They run a podcast called Black Fat Feminine Pod. That's the name.
Black Fat Femi Pod.
Yeah. So
shout out.
There's a whole bunch more.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Oh God. There's a whole bunch more like that of people basically that becoming the discussion out of it, not the genocide in Yemen, which is just absolutely tragic.
Gaza. But also there's genocide
in Yemen too. I got so used to saying
we
genocide
forget.
in Yemen.
Where isn't there a genocide these days? Gee.
You know it's bad when you're confusing your genocide.
That's not a good sign of the world at all.
Yeah. Black people rest in power. Non-black queer people rest in pride. Everyone else rest in peace. Your condolences aren't less meaningful just because you can't say rest in power to a fallen white man. If you think they are, it's because your words were empty from the start.
This is like the best argument I've seen, which is like this very neat division of who it is. And this is from a random guy on Twitter who likes butts and anime. Yeah.
So according to his bio?
Yeah.
Where?
His bio on the right-hand side. That's just the funny part.
Number one most blocked Blue Sky account?
Yeah. Black college dropout trying to get by. Number one most blocked Blue Sky account. I don't know what Blue Sky is.
Blue Sky is a Twitter competitor.
Oh. Okay.
It was, I believe it was made by Dorsey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe.
Wow. Yeah. So anyways, this is the dialogue as an example, right? Is like how to best relate to that. Unfortunately, that is drowning out, along with a lot of the things, his actual message.
Well, and I think that's exactly the sad irony of the situation where you feel so out of control that you do something so extreme that you put other people in control of the narrative around your actions, not the way to accomplish something that is a lasting legacy that you have any agency over. Unfortunate.
You know, had a lot of agency. It's P. Diddy, Sean Combs.
Great transition.
Good transition, guys.
Oh God.
Good transition.
I've never seen Joe turn away. That was like a whole new level of yikes.
Yikes.
So there was another weird story that came out this week. P. Diddy, Sean Combs, there's a lawsuit against him from a producer by the name of Lil Rod.
It's just so
great name for this.
Why would you even choose that one?
Specific.
Of all the Lils you could pick, I just don't know.
Where P. Diddy has been accused of sexually harassing both men and women, both of age and underage. Also, there's stuff in the lawsuit about potential murders and stuff like that too, which P. Diddy covered up as, well, there's Tupac conspiracies, right? Like it kind of feeds into that, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, where he covered up with just calling them a run or like a drive-by shootings and things. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of, but it also alleges that there's basically this massive blackmail ring that's going on in the rap industry. Interesting. It's like an 80-page document for all of this.
Yeah. And people are connecting a lot of dots from different interviews over time. So, for example, Kanye calling P. Diddy a Fed, to I think 50 Cent also saying P. Diddy was gay, and just a whole bunch of dots being connected across the rap community.
I do have a there's a famous clip from last year from Cat Williams that I do have here. I'm not going to play the Kanye one because it's very explicit. It's a lot of N-words being dropped.
Yeah.
And we don't do that. We're way too white here.
Way too white. All of our listeners are white. We've seen the demographics. You guys can hear that.
Really? We have racial demographics?
Yeah.
No, we don't.
On YouTube, yeah.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Racial demographic? No way. Show me.
Can we move on?
I want to see a racial difference. All Jews. All right, go ahead.
All right, well, just one second.
Lost those after that last.
But
a lot of pings from Langley. I'm not sure what that's about.
So here's Cat Williams.
4 times just to protect my integrity and that virgin hole I was telling you about. Right. Because P. Diddy be wanting the body. And you gotta tell him no. You got to tell him no. I did. I did. See, I got the receipts for everything I'm telling you.
But there's actually...
So wait, well, slow down here. Wait a minute. I've never seen that before. I'm reacting to this on live. So what he's suggesting is that P. Diddy was suggested anal sex, and he said no. And that was the whole...
But there's more from that interview that I think will enlighten you a little
bit. There's a lot more from that interview.
Thank you. Keep. I'm on the golden road here.
He offered to suck my in front of all my people at my agency. What am I supposed to do?
I want to just, because we got distracted, it's in front of all my people at my agency.
What the fuck?
But wait, there's more. We're going to have to bleep this, Bennett. You're going to have to bleep that stuff, I think.
It's an adult podcast, kids.
You can say that.
I don't know, man. Whew. It's not good for the algorithm.
The rest of it, I think, is actually important here for that. It's just funny. It just comes in hard on the beginning.
Evidently.
No joke.
What am I supposed to do? He did all of that. I'm thinking I'm the only black person on the script. I get there, it's 3 other black guys on there. Woo. Huh.
So you wonder what they did to get
I told him no. What y'all do? And this is why when I walk in a room, heads go down. Behind my back, I'm nothing. I'm just a regular old comedian that's bitter and jealous. But in my face, no. The king has walked in and they have to respect it only because I've not taken the shortcuts. I've not been funded. They pay you to not talk about things they don't want you to talk about. They tell you that themselves. I came in this business saying I was going to expose. When I talked about Michael Jackson, when I talked about R. Kelly, they canceled me for these things because why would you talk about another black dude? Race is not where the line is drawn. It's God's side and the other side. And we don't care nothing about the other side. Period. All of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. TG Jakes, any of them. All lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way. The truth is the light.
Yeah. Ooh. So
Oof.
Yeah, so this was a famous interview that Cat Williams did, famous comedian, did last year, where he was saying that 2024 is when everything's going to get exposed.
Well, and he was just on Rogan. I haven't finished that
He
episode.
was just on
Yeah,
Rogan.
I just started the episode.
Okay, so I don't know if he talks about this.
I figured there's anything big from it. It probably would have got
Yeah, probably.
clipped by now.
My understanding is they talk a lot about Atlantis.
Okay. Yeah, I did just get to that part. This actually, kind of speaking of Diddy, this reminds me, this was a few years ago. Eminem and Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Eminem has a line to Machine Gun Kelly. It says, "Because the day you put out a hit, the day Diddy admit that he put the hit that got Pac killed."
Ooh.
And it like was a big deal
Ooh.
when
Yeah.
that came out. He does say like at the end of the song, like kind of just kidding,
Yeah, he's
Diddy.
like, I'm just kidding, Diddy. You know I love you. He kind of does
that
that
like
thing.
with a lot of his songs, but like once that genie's out of the bottle, it's kind of hard to be like.
Yeah, but that's been out forever though. That's like been there.
Well,
Yeah, but it
that's
just
always
goes
been a
to-
conspiracy, is that Diddy put out the hit for Pac, and that's been a long-standing conspiracy.
So I saw a lot of that were suggesting that the internet dialogue about this, because there's a ton of speculation, is argued something like, and I'm probably not well founded, but that Pac and Biggie were both in both their feud independently, but they also didn't like the record labels, and they're going to be
independent. Starting their own.
And the argument is that the record labels themselves are controlled by
Obviously.
they didn't like it, so that they got them killed, right? And then that the argument is that P. Diddy is part of a controlled asset of that establishment.
Well, and that's also one of the things in the Kanye West interview that he did. And this interview, the interview from that time was actually taken down, which is interesting. So there was a famous interview that he did a few years ago, and he was talking about how he called out Meek Mill, who Meek Mill's just been going crazy on Twitter.
And it's
been
all
fun.
over the place, too. Yeah.
But he called out Meek Mill. He's just like, the reason why you got out of jail is because you made a deal, and that's why you're coming after me. It's like he's kind of insinuating these types of things. And Meek Mill's been a big like criminal justice reform advocate in the past because he went to jail for drugs and all this stuff, right? But
so to be clear, in the lawsuit, names Meek Mill as one of the people who had gay sex with
to be clear,
P. Diddy.
no. They didn't actually name Meek Mill. It's a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj.
So really girls things.
Yeah.
Well, and so that's actually I have a clip from DJ Academics, who's kind of like a hip hop like radio guy.
All
right. Where he was
Play
doing
it. There's no
he was
downstream
doing a live stream where he was just reading through the thing, and he made the insinuation because he's like, Philadelphia rapper Meek. But or let me just pull this up.
Yeah, the DJ Academics.
He did not. It did not say Meek Mill name. Wait. Oh, hold up. Never mind. Wait, what the fuck? I forgot. Look, Mr. Combs informed Mr. Jones that he had engaged in sexual intercourse with rapper. 5, that's redacted. Look, 5, he's a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj.
Really narrows it down, doesn't it?
His reaction.
We were playing around with that Michael Rubin shit, but if you've been tweeting about everything on planet Earth. If you don't get a Twitter rant saying you about to get Lil Rod killed, you about to shoot up his block, blow his mama's house up, this is saying that you and Diddy were fornicating. What the fuck?
He was fornicating.
I just love how it's like so secretive in the document, and then it's like, you want a clue? Huh? I'll give you a clue. Like the next one down. He performed at the Super Bowl and had a successful Vegas residency. It's like, what is this? The fucking crossword puzzle? This is crazy.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, because like there was a back and forth. I saw like Andrew Tate was tweeting and just like, wait, so P. Diddy had sex with Meek Mill and who's the other, and Usher, and then Meek Mill is like calling him out. He's like, well, you human trafficked. Like, it just turns into this whole thing.
That was strange.
How are we laughing about this?
It is so strange.
Such a sign of the state of the world.
It's one. Okay, so like the meaning. What does it mean? Okay, so one thing, if P. Diddy is gay or bi, no, who cares?
Who cares?
If he's using said things to blackmail people, that's fraud.
African American male, please.
Well, there's been a but there's been
It took me a minute, dude. I had to catch up. I was like, I had to get on the bus and like drive across town to get there.
I was
Oof.
thinking male, like a guy.
Yeah, black man. Yeah.
Works on many levels.
But there's also been all these other things. So people are digging up old clips. Like there's this old clip of Diddy talking to Justin Bieber, early Justin Bieber, like young, like 14, 15-year-old, just like a YouTube star, Justin Bieber.
Discovered Justin Bieber.
And there's also that, right?
That makes a lot of sense.
And Diddy's like, why don't you come around no more, Bieber? And Bieber's just like stuttering through it. Was like, well, you don't have my right number. It's like very weird.
It's very strange. And it is cringy, the video. And it's also possible that not every one of these cases, we don't want to be too... trying to keep it like what we actually know. Yeah, but I do think...
No, let's go the Ben Shapiro
The
route.
question is... the other part we haven't covered yet, which is that the accusation that this is all being recorded and used, as Cat Williams kind of suggests, in a way to coerce as both the carrot of the money and the stick of, if you don't do what we say, we're going to release that you are gay, to a rap community that does not like gay people. That we would be hard to be famous and be gay and be black.
Other things that Cat Williams talked about in that interview too is he's saying that he turned down $50 million because they wanted to put him in a dress and things like that, which is like, that goes into other conspiracy land where there's been things about that, about putting black people in dresses, black dudes in dresses and things. So who knows? Take a lot of this with a grain of salt, but there's just some interesting dynamics there that exist.
Well, especially how it parallels what we covered with. Did we cover this? Ice Cube talking about how he thought that the music industry had kind of intelligence agency control that was encouraging gangster music to happen the way it did.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
I'm not sure if
I don't think we covered it, but we
just talked about it. Oh God! Well, that's
just not recorded.
Little insight to the what we decided not to cover, but it was an interesting. It was an interesting argument from there that seems to be connecting, right? Where people are kind of drawing this throughput line of that story to this, where there was funding of American music and art going all the way back to the the Great Depression.
I talked about jazz diplomacy last week with the CIA operation.
Jazz diplomacy. And then, Cuba's saying, no, American hip hop was used by establishment powers that are important and connected to intelligence agencies to encourage American art.
A few weeks ago, we had the Mike Benn stuff talking about Taylor Swift and NATO.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Did you guys see the thing I sent to her?
A lot of through lines that are existing.
So one of the things is it's difficult to actually draw those things into one coherent narrative because we don't know a lot about what's going on here because it's black hat, right?
Don't say it.
African American hat is that?
Look, I was going to gloss right over it until you mentioned it. So
you got the black hat on, not me.
That's fair. The thing that I sent to our group chat, or maybe it was Instagram, with the same thing, dangerous for our democracy, all the news outlets saying the same talking points. This time it was the Taylor Swift is not a psyop, and all the different
Everyone's
news outlets.
saying it, yeah.
Interesting.
It's interesting that they care so much about it.
Right? Why do they want everyone to know?
What a weird thing to just keep telling us.
Well, and the other side of that is just like, we aren't even saying that she is. We're just saying that if you were to have one, it would make sense, right?
And it's weird that they're now like so overt
Defensive.
about trying to be defensive of that.
Well, there's been a lot of allegations in the rap community. Like I've seen this from like up and coming YouTube rappers and things like that, talking about how they're like very suspicious of this guy that popped off. They think that there was some like sexual favors that were going on with his label industry. And like, I'm not going to name names on this, but like those types of allegations, I've seen those over the years happen a lot. And it always just seems to be happening in the rap industry.
Mm-hmm.
And there was arguments about P. Diddy's like mentor, who was from like old Motown records, who had all kinds of other connections that they were of concern, but I haven't seen it like a solid case that was tied to the intelligence agencies.
Well, can I ask one big clarifying question? What the lawsuit here? What is the like premise of the lawsuit? What was done wrong? This isn't just about his personal behavior.
Lil Rod is saying that P. Diddy sexually harassed him.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's like the initial basis.
Additionally, using blackmail and fraud on people. Right. So that blackmail part of it, the reason why I made the joke about Epstein up front is because there is a clear, while there isn't yet any clear tie to intelligence agencies, specifically like there is in the Epstein case, there's a very clear, in this situation, method being used that we do know that the intelligence agency used. For example, using MK Ultra in a brothel in LA in the 1960s and 70s. We know that they, put diplomats into compromising situations for that, specifically for that purpose. Yeah, it's 12:50, so alarms are going off.
Apparently.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, we don't know that, but it is a method used, and yes, yada, yada, yada. So.
We might have to put that conversation behind the paywall, you guys. I got spicy. I'm not sure YouTube's going to like that.
You're telling me that you've been fornicating.
That was so funny.
Wow. Okay, a lot to unpack here. Obviously, there's going to be more of this that comes out in the case as it goes on. So we'll keep tabs on our friend P. Diddy and his sexual exploits.
This year's turned out to be quite the year. There's a lot of interesting stuff.
More than we
March
bargained
1st.
for.
Yeah, March 1st.
Yeah. But, they was fornicating.
Now, on that note, I think that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you in the next one.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Human Reaction. Help us fight internet censorship by liking, commenting, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with your friends. To find us around the internet, visit linktree.com/humanreactionpod. And remember,
you can't have Russia right next to all of our bases in NATO. That seems right.
How dare they put their country there?